Hello everyone, welcome along. Today's topic, the making of a high-performing team. Looking at our November topic being people, this really drives us into the high-performance team and how to create that in your business. So I'm very excited to jump into this topic with you. Jamie, as you're living in the ideal team structure there, can you talk us through what that looks like to have the right team structure?
Yeah, well, at a high level, Kristy, it's funny. Ed always says grinders, minders, and finders, and I always say finders, minders, and grinders. So doesn't matter which way you say it, but yeah, essentially that's what you got to have, and that's our sports team, if you like. That's the positions on the field, and you've got to hire people to the position, just like a sports coach would play someone, in Australia. Here, of course, we've got the AFL, we've got the full forward and the full back, and we've got the ruck and the ruck rover. And for our Canadian friends, we could go into AFL quite deeply, although I'd probably have a debate with some New South Wales and Queensland people about rugby league and all those positions, wouldn't we, Tim?
Yeah.
So, but look, for many years I played a lot of AFL. I'm about 6'2.5", and the coaches would always play me. Even at 17 years old, I was playing ruck. So if your natural ability is to be tall, they always played me in the ruck because you had to be tall and you had to run everywhere. So it's very similar to our Wize ideal team, particularly finders or client managers. You really have to be, I would say, a people person. I love the analogy that Carl Jung created, the famous, I think he was a Swiss psychologist from memory. But he said, personality types, you're either born an introvert, what they call an ambivert, or an extrovert. So an ambivert's sort of someone who's a bit of both. So I think if you're a people person, you're probably a bit of maybe an ambivert or an extrovert maybe. And if you like dealing with people every day, and if you get energy from dealing with people, then you're probably best as a finder or a client manager. But then you do have, other people who just get that satisfaction of balancing the books, getting that warm glow when you reconcile a set of accounts or you've got the financial statements finished and you just get, a high from that. So I think fundamentally the right team structure is made up of putting people in the right seats. I'm an avid reader. I've read thousands of books over the last 30 years. And one of the best books I read was Jim Collins' In Good to Great. If you haven't got a copy of that book, it's a great book, Jim Collins. And actually, I saw Jim speak. He came to Australia and Melbourne not that long ago. And Jim Collins is quoted as saying, what you've got to do is find the right people, put them in the right seat, on the right bus, get the wrong people off the bus and head the bus in the right direction. And now essentially that's what we're doing here, Kristy. We've got to try and find the right people. When I say that, the bus is the analogy of your team or of your business. So it's really at the core, I would say, today's discussion is at the core of trying to grow your firm or trying to move forward. And, a big part of this too is career growth. That's extremely important for people to have career growth and at a bigger picture for their full potential. I started out in bookkeeping. My very first job was doing my dad's bookkeeping, my dad's books on the farm. That's just what I did, and I learned. And I remember back in those days, I think I've said it before, I was probably talking 30 years ago now, but we used to have a program called Quicken. Some of the bookkeepers here might still use Quicken, but when you used to hit the keyboard, it'd go ka-ching, and it'd go to the next transaction, and then you'd manually reconcile your books. You look at your bank statement and you tick it off, and then you tick off screen. So, so the bookkeeping was absolute foundational for me. And then even when I went through university and got through university and got my degree, what was my first job? It was bookkeeping. I worked in a furniture manufacturing company in a little hometown where I came from, and I did bookkeeping. And so, I think most of us are born out of, as Ed said, the Division 4 production. So, we do our apprenticeship or whatever you want to call it, and I used to do accounts payable, accounts receivable, used to do payroll, used to help with the stock takes and all that sort of thing. And then that career progressed and went into public practice and, so forth. So finding out where you sit on the team can take years. It's a career. It can take years to work out, I think, where you're most happiest on that team. And that's why I love the Wize Ideal Team, because you want to find where you're most happy. And when you run your own firm as well, you've got to then try and find the strengths and weaknesses of each of your team members and then, put them in the right seat. And that's a process. It's not like an overnight, bang, it happens, so it is a process. And it's great to have that team structure, just like this, the sports analogy that I started with. So,
yeah, I think it's great when people know their position on the team. They don't need to worry about the other positions. They have their area to focus on and they produce the results for their role. And then they have team members to lean on for the other areas. It's great to have that balance in the team and not expect a generalist to come in to do everything and to have someone who can specialize in their role.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really the old model, Kristy, or the unconscious model or by default model. And, I was caught in that. I was trapped in that, all those years ago before I sort of met Ed, and I would just hire people and then I would just expect whoever I hired to essentially do everything. So, I wanted them to talk to the clients. I wanted them to get the work done. I wanted them to review work. I wanted them to do everything. And, essentially I was looking for superstars.
Yeah.
And
And you've got to pay for superstars at a very high rate.
Yeah, and I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't any superstar. Like, I was technically okay, not that good technically. I battled through and, most of my conversations in the early days with clients was, look, I don't know, but I'll find out. It's probably not the best situation, but most people were patient, but I just wasn't in the right seat. And I think Ed tells a story where he's never in the right seat either. I remember he often tells a story where he just couldn't work out why, he wasn't happy, because he was always in production. So, yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I think one of the most important things you can do is to understand yourself. Unexamined life is not worth living. So it's really important to understand your own strengths and weaknesses. And even more so if you're a leader. So if you're an up and coming client manager or owner of a firm, it's extremely important to understand your team's strengths and weaknesses. Some of the biggest failings I've had is expecting people to do things that just couldn't do it. May I not mention, but like multi-million dollar deals that didn't work out. So that's why we're here, to learn from those experiences. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.